These aren't the stories your mother told you. No, these are the other stories.
Today's episode of The Other Stories is Worth 1,000 Words, written by Dexter McLeod and narrated by Erica Ventura.
When I heard the familiar hissing, I peered out through the apartment window, stealing glances to the side street below. The parish priest was back again. As he shook the spray paint between uses, the narrow alley boxed in the metallic echo of the ball bearing clanking around inside the can. I watched as he covered over the fresh graffiti, a ritual he'd come to repeat several times a week, like a new sacrament. He painted blindly, hiding his eyes from whatever the artist had done. Out of habit, I forced my own gaze to the ground, afraid to let myself see what was on the wall. Near the priest's feet rested a few puddles of empty clothes, encircled by scorch marks that branded the asphalt like a dark nimbus. I tried to imagine who'd been wearing them. Blue jeans, hoodies, ball caps. Young men, I supposed. What must they have seen in the graffiti? What could have been so alluring that they could not turn away? I glanced to the corner of the living room, to the box of home videotapes and photo albums, pushed back as far as they could go beneath the end table. I might not know what the men were looking at, but I could empathize with the need to look. Even one last time. Even knowing what it might mean. I thought of Wesley and Ava, and a fresh stab rose in my abdomen. My eyes burned. It was 2 years since Wesley had left early to take Ava to daycare. I wasn't feeling well that morning, and he'd offered to take her as he went to work. The clanking sound of the priest's spray paint can outside was suddenly the police knocking on my door that morning, hats in hand. "Mrs. Kay?" one asked, before telling me a driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, hitting Wesley's car from behind at an intersection and pushing them into oncoming traffic. I glanced again at the box of home videotapes, barely able to focus my blurring eyes. I itched to run across the room and take out Ava's baby book, to marvel over the inky blots of her footprints while smelling the locks of her hair. And at last, to flip through her photos. Consequences be damned. Maybe they won't come for me. Maybe the only people in the photos would be us. Just Wesley beaming down at me while I held Ava in the delivery room. Maybe there wouldn't be a presence lurking somewhere in the corner of the photo, or in the shadows of the home videos. Maybe mine were special, not tainted, not like all the other photographs in the world, or films, or paintings. Maybe mine were safe. What did it matter anymore? Every day it seemed more people gave in, leaving piles of clothes behind like a hollow cenotaph, just to be trolleyed away with the trash. Like all those poor people down at the theater last week. They'd been warned, of course, but they just couldn't help themselves. Since no one could risk watching the television anymore, the radio had been the public's only source of news. The government warned against it, but it was becoming more frequent. People gathering for one last hurrah. To escape this unbearable melancholy, I suppose. Private watch parties in people's homes. In the park, projected up on white sheets hung between trees. The police would find what was left the next morning. Bundles of clothing scattered around a dead projector. And the footprints of the things that had come to claim the people. But the theater was the worst, like a bizarre suicide pact. What was it last week? A marathon of Hayao Miyazaki films? No, that was the week before. No, last week was the Lord of the Rings trilogy. From what the radio said, the attendees had vanished before Frodo made it to Rivendell. 50-something people. Gone. No. Taken. The clanking of the paint cans stopped. I pulled aside the curtain and watched as the parish priest moved up the street and headed back to the cathedral. The brick wall opposite was now painted black, with streaks running down despite the chilly air. I found myself wondering again what the graffiti must have been before the priest transubstantiated it into this empty canvas. It was horrifying. Its blankness. There was no more color in the world. Just a void, where everything and everyone used to be. I crossed myself out of habit, grabbed my coat, and left my apartment. The temptation was lessened outside, here in the open air, like a faint ringing in the ears. I just needed to walk around the block to clear my head. Wesley wouldn't want me sulking, though he would never believe the world had come to this. I found myself walking up the cathedral steps. The heavy doors opened with ease, and I stared into the darkened nave. The stained glass windows were mostly boarded up, blotting out any decorations. Only the occasional blank rose-colored window remained, bathing the aisles in an eerie pink light. I walked toward the altar, casting careful glances at the covered paintings that once figured brightly in niches along the aisles. Now, heavy drapes were bolted around the frames, keeping things from coming out. I'd heard every museum the world over had taken the same precautions.
Ainsley?
Said Father Cassian.
Oh,
I said, startled.
I didn't see you.
It's so dark in here. He glanced at the drapes I'd been staring at.
You needn't worry about the paintings. They can't harm you here.
I'd heard...
Yes?
I'd heard that people looked at the paintings in here, thinking they had to be safe. Being religious, I mean. That they'd been taken too. He seemed to consider this. Why do you think this is happening?
Perhaps we've stared too long,
he said.
Like looking into the sun. Maybe we've made idols, and the bill has come due. Maybe, instead of pillars of salt, we're left with piles of empty clothes for looking where we shouldn't.
Is that Rome's opinion?
It's mine.
What are they?
Sit,
he said. I joined him among the pews. Are they demons? I said, pressing him.
Rome believes the papal delegation has backtracked this pestilence to its origin, a cave in Kentucky. A group of film students were making a horror movie. A friend of a friend knew some locations they could shoot in. While exploring, they found an undiscovered cave painting and used it in their film. And something got out.
Out? Out of the painting.
I'm told there are 3 beings in the painting. Demons, perhaps. Perhaps something else. At first, these beings showed up in the corners of their film. Not the images from the cave painting, but as if they were people. But they moved, showing up in different scenes, in different places. You could rewind it, and they'd be somewhere else. Like art is a window into a reality they live in. Then they spread. Bits got uploaded to social media, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere. Shared and reshared. They move like vermin, reproducing like cockroaches. An infestation of imagery, like human creativity has been polluted by them.
Do you think if you blessed something, they couldn't spread into it?
It's been tried. Look at any photo, movie, drawing, anything. Long enough, they'll creep out. I've heard that the first week people started disappearing. The 3 of them came from a kindergarten's finger painting. Nothing is safe.
But maybe... My heart was beating so fast, my chest hurt. I can't remember what she looks like. I can't remember Ava's face anymore. It's only been 2 years, and I can't see her face anymore. What kind of mother does that? I can't see her face! I stood up. I was running before I realized it. My legs were pushing me forward, but it was as if I was only watching. Like someone else was driving me headlong out onto the street. I spun, running back up the narrow sidewalk the way I'd come. My lungs cramped in the chilled air, burning for relief I couldn't give them. I clipped my shoulder on my apartment door as I rushed into my hallway, slamming it back into its frame and sliding down onto the floor. I sat with my knees hugged to my chest and banged the back of my head against the door, in defiance to what I wasn't sure. To the circumstances, to the unfairness. A lighter square of wallpaper caught my attention. An accusatory rectangle where the family portrait once hung. I can't remember her face. I got up and rushed to the box of videotapes and albums. I pulled out a picture frame, hastily wrapped in butcher paper to protect myself from looking. The tape had somehow yellowed already. How could that be? Has it been that long? Is 2 years enough to look this old? This forgotten? This abandoned? I flip through the tapes until I find the one I want. The one I need. The thin script of my handwriting marks the label. It reads, Ava, 13 months old. First word. I push the tape into the VCR. My fingers tremble. I turn the remote over with sweaty palms, frantic to find the buttons on what now seems an ancient and alien device. The images stream across the screen. Wesley is bouncing Ava on his knee, seated right where I am now, on our old leather couch. He gibbers and coos at her. I can barely see through the lake of my tears as he plays with her. The room darkens. I can see sunlight still pouring through the window, but the light is muted. I can see the faint hint of stars bleeding through the daylight, twinkling like the heartbeat of distant lighthouses, covered in the gloom of twilight. In the corner of the screen, down the hallway captured on the video, a figure moves into frame. Distant at first and blurry, but it shambles toward the foreground. Then another, and a third. They move toward me in stilted, inhuman lurches, as if their bodies contain no muscles, no bones, no joints. Like scarecrows, stuffed full of whispers and wind. One wears a death shroud, the waxy cerecloth held close to its body, like papier-mâché, but yellowed like ancient rags of skin. The second wears a squirming coat made of living rats, tails tied together in a living rat king. The last wears a dress made from feathered crow skin, blue-black in the dying light. They carry staves as they walk, like fence posts plucked from the earth, weathered and cracked from a century of wind and sun and rain. They have threadbare masks with no eyes, with gaps where a smile should be, but instead reveal mouths hanging agape, like broken jaws. The daylight spasms, a flicker of light on the screen. The room is becoming dimmer, and a strange chasm seems to open between what things are and what they should be. Everything is less solid. I'm sitting on the idea of a chair. I'm staring at the concept of a television. The shadow is falling. The color is draining out of the world, replaced by deeper twilight. I look back to Ava, to Wesley. I force myself to look at them. But now the things are all around me, unmoored from the images on the screen, and are here, around the couch. Their hands touch my shoulders. There, Ava's mouth is moving. She giggles in the dying light, rocking in Wesley's arms. She laughs again when he points at me.
Who is that?
He asks her for the 100th time. And her mouth is opening in a perfect oval. They wrap themselves around me tightly, and I'm less real. I'm less me. But I can see her face, and I remember it again, and her lips quiver in another giggle.
Who's that, Ava?
He says again. Their fingers crawl around my face, caressing me like spiders' webs. She laughs. I stare between their fingers, and I let her face burn into my mind. I will not forget her again. Wherever they're taking me, whatever they do, I will not forget her again. Her image is worth more than 1,000 words. But I beg them with my mind, just a little longer. I'm fading, but just a moment longer. I don't need 1,000. I just need one. One last word before they take me, leaving a heap of broken clothing, a singe mark on my couch. One's finger closes my right eye, and I'm fading. I strain to see with my left through a prism of tears. There is no struggle to be had. Its grip is iron. The room is dark. I'm sinking. The home movie sputters.
Who is that?
Wesley smiles at the version of me filming the video. I feel myself falling. I'm almost empty. Just her face. They close my left eye. I still see her face. She giggles. I feel myself empty out, like painted over graffiti. Please, just one word.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Other Stories, Worth 1,000 Words, written by Dexter McLeod, narrated by Erica Ventura, produced by Chidosia Uzochukwu, with music by Daniel Birch and Ad Neon Lux and Enough Records and Ghost Hack and Tom Robson, and sound effects provided by freesound.org. The episode illustration was provided by Luke Spooner of Carry On House. A quick thanks to our community managers Jasmine Arch, Joshua Boucher and his eyeless ones, Mary Pastrano and Cody Czarzasty, and to Joshua Boucher for helping with our submission reading. And of course to Ben Errington for the ongoing explosion of content he fires out of his social media cannon. Dexter McLeod resides in Western Kentucky, where he writes for the darker shades of Southern Gothic, folk and cosmic horror, science fiction and the new weird. His work has been published by Air and Nothingness Press, Dark Moon Books, The Horror Tree, T.Spec and the Hugo Award finalist / European SF award-winning magazine Sci-Fi Journal. His stories are being performed in half a dozen volumes of The Other Stories, this podcast, along with Dissonance Media's gothic horror podcast After the Gloaming. Visit Dexter McLeod's Linktree to connect with him online. That's linktr.ee/Dexter McLeod. The link will be in the show notes. Erica Ventura is an artist, mother, bilingual narrator, and a husbandry technician. How does she manage it all? No idea, but her artwork can be seen on Instagram at @EFVENTU, or you can visit her artist page at facebook.com/bioartsy. The Other Stories is a production of the Story Studio Hawk and Cleaver, and is brought to you with a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. That means don't change it, don't sell it, but by all means share the hell out of it. So, until next time.